Okay, so we're part 3 of modeling this human head using our topology workbook. Um, at this step, we want to look for a couple of areas of edge flow or polyflow. I'm going to right click here and go to face, and I'm going to hold down shift and double click, and that gives me this. Now you'll notice again that I see some yellow around the edges here. That means I have soft select on, so I'm going to turn that off by tapping the B key. Soft select's very useful, but we don't want to use it right now. So we're going to go ahead and turn it off again. Just always want to be mindful if it's on or off or whatever. But I'm going to shift click there, and I've got the region around the mouth. You're going to wind up doing the same thing again. Sometimes when I tap B here, I will get that circle there, and that will allow me to paint select within, because we are going to do another 2 bevel operations. So if I shift right click here, I'm going to go to bevel face. And again, we're looking for mitering to be uniform here. So if you look at this mitering here, uniform, and then I'm going to hold down the tab key again, and you'll notice that after I perform the operation, it doesn't let me do it. But if I click away here and hold tab down, it doesn't let me do it. So I'm going to use shift to select all of these. Why that tool is inconsistent, I have no idea. But if I tap the G key, that's going to repeat the previous thing that I just did. And that's how Maya does, well, any tool that you just did. So if I tap G, it's going to intrude that one more time, or I should say bevel, because that's actually what it's doing. It's created a polygon bevel there again. And I'm going to be mindful. I'm going to go over here to my front view and kind of see that there's some rather inconsistent movements that are made here, and this has to do with just some of the dimensional settings. And by that I mean we want kind of 3 consistent rings to be sort of outside the mouth, and we don't really have that right now. These are very inconsistent. So I'm going to go over here and zoom in a little bit on the mouth, and I'm going to move some things around to get this to be more consistent. And again, it could be vertices, it could be edges, it could be faces. It winds up being a personal preference or what works best as you get more acclimated to the tools that are available here. I'm going to double click on this and just move this edge down so that again we get some more evenness kind of all the way around between these parts. I'm going to go ahead and scale this so that it's a little more coplanar just in general, and then I'm going to smooth preview and see sort of where this all is. Now I could make it completely coplanar with all of these, but this starts to get very mechanical and robotic. As you can see, again, I just scaled it flat essentially. But you can see we got sort of a pinch here, so I'm going to right click and just tweak kind of as I go to smooth things out. Again, at the end of the day, we're going to be using the space geometry to conform to many different types of heads, as it were. So it just needs to be generally consistent in terms of the number of faces that we have available and where they are. You'll see that, again, we have this mouth sort of forming here, and that's that. So again, I'm going to come in here. I'm actually going to use vertices this time, and I'm just going to push in from that side, this outer rim of the edge flow there, moving around, keeping symmetry going, trying to create a consistent spacing between these elements, right? And I'll go ahead and keep doing that here. Maybe move these up a bit here. You'll see that we've got some jagged edge going on there. I'm going to kind of smooth that out a little bit. Create some curvature down to where the mouth region will be eventually. But I'm going to go ahead and go over here and look at it, and you can kind of start to see these regions starting to form a little bit. But that's that. Another thing that I noticed, and again, I'm using this as a reference image right here, so is that this center chunk is a little on the wide side. So I'm going to hold down shift, select an adjacent face there, and I'm going to scale this in just a little bit so we get some consistency on width there. So again, if I do this, hold down shift, I can select that whole poly loop that goes around that way. Now right now what we need to do is select just up from this pole here. I'm going to select this face. I'm going to hold down the tab key, and it won't give me the paint selection tool. I could use the paint select tool, but that's not really what we're doing when we get here. Again, now when I hold down the key, I guess if I go to the adjacent polygon, it works. Yeah. So I'm going to hold this down here, and I'm going to come down just past this first pole to this point here, which is the inner loop. So I started just above this pole here, and I came down past this pole here into this sort of second loop of the face. So it's very important that we get this right, because this is setting us up for good geometry. And then I'm going to hold down I can hold down tab and go from one to the adjacent and click that, or I could have held down shift, and now I have these faces selected, and it does in this case need to be exactly those faces. And I'm going to polygon bevel again. So I'm going to go ahead and shift right click and go to bevel face, and I'm going to make sure that mitering is set to uniform. And again, we have sort of this issue where this isn't ideal as far as the edge flow goes. It's gonna shape up. We're gonna get it there, but you can kind of see the nostrils are starting to form here in the face and whatnot. And so in order for this to just be a little better off, we're gonna go over here and I'm gonna move some things around. Again, we're a little too wide on the middle piece here, so I'm gonna use vertices and actually scale it in just a little bit more here, or rather move, because in this case all I have to do is move them. Right, move them together. I could scale the faces. And then I'm going to hit the F key to straighten it out. And then I'm going to go back again just to stay on vertice rather, and move some things in. But again, we're starting to see where the formation of the nose actually is, and that's what that's about to be. So we have that. And what we have again is an edge loop, or a face loop rather. So when I double click that, you can see that it went all the way around the top there. But in this view, it's a little easier to see the way that this should look. And this is smooth preview, but I'm going to go back to the actual geometry, or maybe to this point where there's a lattice, and try to do that. And now what we're about to do is form a feature around the face. So to give you an idea of what that looks like, this is our character reference there. And we're actually not going to cut any more edge loops. We're going to start moving some things around, and it's important to sort of note where you are in 3D space, and that's why we have these views up. And I'm going to use smooth preview, but as you can see, the nose here has sort of this region that needs to be moved out and scaled and shaped. And it needs to be shaped in such a way that it's more conducive to looking like a human nose instead of what it looks like right now. So I'm going to pull this out along the Z, and you can start to see where that might happen. And I'm going to use, again, smooth preview with the lattice, because I do like to keep an eye on the lattice. With symmetry on, the whole nose is going to go ahead and come out a little bit from the face, but really it's these three here. And then I may go ahead and just move this in a bit. And then this is kind of a move that's a little more advanced, just in terms of, I guess, maybe visualization. But I'm going to go ahead and rotate this. Now watch what happens here when I rotate it. It's actually moving vertices as well. So you could choose to just move these vertices. It's really going to wind up being up to you. But let's check out what smooth preview looks like. And we need to work on the bridge of the nose here. So I'm going to take this, and now I am going to use soft select. So I'm going to press the B key, and I'm going to hold the B key down. Now if your soft select was way out here, that means your brush is way, way too big. Or your region of effect size is way too big. Each one of the translate, rotate, scale tools has a soft select feature. So if I double click on rotate, for example, I go down to soft selection, you can see that the fall off radius, which is what that is way too big. If I bring it down, it's going to start to reduce it until I get into a very small space. But I have to let go of my mouse in order to see that effect happen, right? So each tool has its own soft selection bit there, but I'm going to go ahead and use scale, and I'm going to scale in the bridge of the nose here using soft select, which, as you can see, sort of influences those other elements. And just use a little bit. I don't really want to do that much there. But the other problem here is that the front of the nose is way, way too skinny or too flat. So I'm keeping soft select on. I'm going to move this up. And as you start to model the more organic elements of the face, and really they're all organic at the end of the day, you're going to find yourself using soft select quite a bit, because it allows you to sort of nudge things around rather than just abruptly jerk around vertices and create hard edges and things like that. So, case in point, if I want to come in here and actually create more contour around the head this way, or I want to bring up the size of the nose. Now you'll notice that I'm actually dragging around quite a bit of it. I'm going to go ahead and hold down the B key until I get a smaller region, and it doesn't influence quite as much of that. But I'm starting to get what is looking like more of a nose. It's not, certainly not, we're not there yet by any stretch, but we are starting to see that. And that's by paying attention to the anatomy in terms of the actual geometry that's being used here to form the nose region, right? Which will get more and more detailed as we go along. I am keeping an eye to some extent on all of my views, not just the ones that I want to keep an eye on. So there's that. So once we have this region sort of in a better place, it's certainly not perfect again, then we can kind of move forward. So I'm gonna keep working here just a little bit to nudge some things around. But this is essentially the kind of work that you're going to be doing going forward once we get this geometry where it needs to be, because a lot of this is going to be forming around a reference image that maybe either you draw or somebody else drew, and you want to create a humanoid face as it relates to that reference image that will go into these viewports. So that's all. We're up to the nose here. We'll go ahead and quit the video now. It's 11:51 on the time, and we'll move on to next steps in the next video.